Hey, how's it going, everyone? This is Amos, and welcome back to Dividend Compounders with Cheese. Can I just say this? Kamala Harris, stocks that I think will go up if she wins this presidential election. On social media, it seems like they have already concluded that she is going to win this presidential race. They keep showing me poll after poll and content that is confident in the fact that Kamala is beating Trump. That's what the media is showing. Is it the truth? I don't know. Who knows? But what I do know is that there are people out here that make politics their entire personality. Have you ever sat down at a dinner table with someone where all they want to talk about is politics, or you have that coworker at work that won't shut up about politics? You know how annoying it gets, which I think is kind of funny, but it seems like a pretty stressful life to be always engaged and angry at the other side of the aisle. If you can't tell, I'm not really a politics kind of guy. I'm more of a stock market focused guy that stays neutral on most issues. I live by the mantra of I have no enemies. And you know what? Maybe I'm wrong, but I think if Kamala wins, I have no reason to believe that anything will dramatically change because, after all, she's basically an extension of the Joe Biden era. And we've already seen what the stock market behaved and looked like from 2020 up until now. So, in a very ignorant way, I could just go ahead and say that whatever companies and sectors are thriving right now, they'll just continue to do fine because of favorable policies, favorable conditions, and capital markets just doing their thing. Then again, politicians have the power to change the law and modify winners and losers in the stock market, so maybe we should pay attention. So as we explore the Kamala winners, I just want to throw this out there. Don't just invest into something or a company because of a president or potential policies. Instead, if you were on the fence about a particular industry or company, this might be the catalyst and pat on the butt you needed to move right along and go with it. Think about it. If the presidential candidate is going to help this sector and you already like the sector beforehand, then why not? So what you see on your screen right now are the sectors that we are going to talk about in this video, and of course I'm going to give specific companies and stock names. First one is clean energy, and I'm really hesitant to say it because green energy has not been doing too hot. But in comparison to the oil and gas industry, the policies are in favor of clean energy. In 2022, the Biden-Harris administration helped pass the Inflation Reduction Act, IRA, which paved the way for clean energy to be prioritized and incentivized. From reading up on our campaign promises, I don't think much will change. I think they're going to continue pumping money into the clean energy sector. Unfortunately for the clean energy sector, the high interest environment was really unfavorable for the expansion, growth, and implementation for a lot of these solar panels. However, now that interest rates are slowly but surely being cut, maybe it will be their time to shine in 2025, 2026. I mean, we saw a brief preview of how bullish the market can be towards green energy in a low interest environment in 2021. Besides, climate change is a crucial part of the Democrat agenda, so I don't think they're going to let these companies fail. And as you can see on your screen, there's a lot of companies in this field. There's a lot of companies making, producing, or partnering with the solar panel space. But the most recognizable solar investment is probably going to be Tesla. Or you could always just invest into a solar ETF known as TAN, ticker symbol TAN. TAN is an ETF that is made up of all the different solar-based companies. And as I alluded to earlier, they've been having a rough patch as of recently. As you can see on your screen right now, from about the end of 2021 up until now, they've been trading flat and kind of on the decline. But as you can see, from 2020 to 2021, they did go through a serious ramp up and hyper growth period because when I think about the solar space, it's similar to the utilities sector in that they require a lot of capital and money in order to expand and grow and to build out the infrastructure, these manufacturing plants, and to get all hands on deck in the operation process of making the panels itself. So in the past 5 years, the adjusted stock price total return for TAN is only 34%, which is nothing to write home about. But with Kamala driving this family minivan and the interest rates coming back down to earth, the comeback story is inevitable, right? Maybe. Speaking of comeback, love 'em or hate 'em, the Colorado Buffaloes are now 6-2, and in their conference, I do believe they're now 4-1, which means they still do have a realistic shot of making the Big 12 championship title game, and they've qualified for a bowl game because now they have 6 wins, which is wild to hear because just 2 years ago, the Colorado Buffaloes football team were 1-11, meaning they only won one match out of 12 matches total. They were easily the worst team in FBS. I'm so sorry if you actually played for them and I just offended you, but objectively on paper, they were that bad. But here we are today. The comeback is real. And yes, I'm on that Colorado bandwagon because, believe it or not, I applied to and was accepted to Colorado many years ago when I was younger. But I decided not to go to Boulder because their academic scholarship package they offered me and the out-of-state tuition, it just didn't make sense to me, right? It wasn't appealing. But the fact is, I could have been a Colorado alumnus if money wasn't an issue. So I feel like I still have a connection to them. Kind of like the dude in my neighborhood when I was growing up. He used to hand out king-sized candy to the kids on Halloween. And no, he wasn't creepy or anything. He was actually genuinely a good dude. And I don't even remember his name, but he was a cool guy. Speaking of which, can you believe that Halloween is right around the corner? Unless you're a Jehovah's Witness, of course. But time is flying, my friends. So if you're not deciding to live your life right now, I don't know what you're waiting for. Now is the time to just start living your life. And then next up, we have the pew pew industry. Firearms, ammo, and defense companies typically see enormous demand when a Democrat wins. This is just a historical fact that you can open up a new tab and check on Google. And that's because the NRA members, they tend to buy up pew pew toys because they fear legislative changes happening that's going to restrict their access to buying some in the future. And from what I have seen, things are heating up in Asia, the Middle East, Europe, and in Jerusalem, so it looks like war is going to be on the menu coming up soon. With that in mind, I would be eyeballing defense contractors, what you see on your screen right now, because they not only supply the US military, but they also supply most of our allies as well. So with wars on the horizon, the real winners are going to be Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, General Dynamics, and Northrop Grumman. Really quick, let's just go over each one. When we think about Northrop Grumman, as of right now, they're producing the B-21 stealth bomber, which is a plane that can fly really high up in the air without being detected by enemy surveillance systems. Basically, what I'm trying to tell you is that Northrop Grumman has huge contracts with the DoD on behalf of the United States Air Force, and each one of these stealth planes will have a price tag of about $600 million. So can you see how easily that can contribute to billions of dollars of revenue for Northrop Grumman? And not only that, they're also producing a whole portfolio dedicated to weapons systems. And then number two, let's talk about General Dynamics. General Dynamics is home to the Army tanks for cavalry and infantry units, and they also make sea ships for the Navy, like destroyers. Now, as a guy who has spent some time in the Army, do I see the Strykers or Abrams going away anytime soon? No. If anything, I see us moving away from traditional airborne operations using light infantry to now utilizing more mechanized vehicles, because if we go to war with China or with Russia, it's probably going to look more like an all-out conventional war, because all sides are probably going to not utilize their nuclear weapons and have to just utilize manpower and fight the old-fashioned way, because as soon as one person decides to use one of those weapons, the whole world is going to explode. So I think it's going to be a combination of conventional warfare, but also with cyber attacks. And nobody asked me, but I think the Stryker is superior to the Bradleys, which is another infantry fighting vehicle that troops use. And if you have no idea what I'm talking about, Strykers are basically transportation cars with a big gun that can carry about 9 to 10 people. So with 4 of these big boys, you can transport an entire platoon at about 50 miles per hour. Moving right along, let's go ahead and talk about Raytheon. Raytheon does a little bit of everything, from jet engines to air defense systems to manufacturing drones. If you know anything about modern warfare, then you know that it's a battle of the robots. I know I just talked about conventional warfare, but within that battlefield, there's going to be field artillery, there's going to be tanks, there's going to be drones. aka the little planes that fly in the air. A single drone can wipe out an entire platoon of soldiers, let alone an entire company. And the catch is, the pilot of that drone could be flying it from thousands of miles away in a safe location. So I think drones have changed the name of the game of warfare. So what snipers were to World War II, I think of drones in the same capacity in the modern age. And then of course, let's go ahead and talk about Lockheed Martin. They're in the business of making military aircraft for the most part, and their most exciting product in their lineup right now is the F-35. If you've seen one of these bad boys before in the sky, then you know that they're absolutely disgusting. They're sick. As a matter of fact, if you're anything like me, you could just pause this video and spend the next 40 minutes just watching videos of the F-35 on YouTube and just being blown away. Lockheed Martin also make helicopters known as the Black Hawks, and a fun fact about me is that when I was branching in the Army, I actually gave up my aviation slot in order to be an infantry guy instead. I know, not the smartest decision looking back, but you live and you learn. I think for me at the time, what was more important was having the ability to lead and be quote unquote tip of the spear with about 50 men under my command. I don't know, it was just appealing to me at the time as a young 21-year-old. But anyways, Lockheed Martin's current most popular aircraft is the F-16. Even if you're not a plane guy, everyone has heard of the F-16s, aka the Fighting Falcons. So on that note, you could close your eyes and pick one of these defense contractor companies at random, and they're bound to be a winner. Unless they run into quality control issues like Boeing, then you're going to be pooping your pants every week saying, why did I buy into this company? And before we move on, I do want to give a shout out to the firearms for the civilian and law enforcement side of the house. In which case, I think the clear winner is going to be Smith & Wesson, and maybe Ruger. I did a whole deep dive on Smith & Wesson, so I feel a little bit more comfortable saying them over Ruger. But if I were to research and analyze Ruger, I might say otherwise, because on surface level, it does seem as if Ruger performs better in the stock market. And I have Vista Outdoor here as well because they do manufacture and produce ammo. And I just want to apologize really quick because I am cognizant of the time, and it seems like I spent way too much time going over the military-industrial complex, so I'm going to go ahead and speed run the other ones. Moving right along. Next up is the cannabis industry. I'm just going to call it the green leaf. Kamala Harris has co-sponsored bills advocating for the decriminalization and legalization of cannabis. I think it was back in like 2017, and not too long ago as well, which means if she does become president, she could probably get federal legalization done. And to me, I find that ironic because when she was the Attorney General of California and as a prosecutor, she put a lot of people behind bars for smoking that green leaf, aka that herb. Anyhow, back in 2021, I did a deep dive and I analyzed all the different green leaf companies out there, and I realized there's so many players in this field. So it's hard to say who's going to be the winner in the end, because the green leaf industry is known as the second gold rush. I guess we can call it the green rush. And I think once green leaf becomes federally legalized, the bigger fishies in the sea will be swallowing up the little ones. It's a trend that I saw happen in the tobacco industry as well, and that's why I'm making that prediction and forecast. Consolidations and mergers will most likely be the outcome of all the different players, and there's a ton of them in this space, remember. Speaking of which, I have a buddy that I went to school with that is probably praying for a buyout of his little cannabis operation that he's running in Colorado. And you can go ahead and call me ignorant, but I think the major winners of the cannabis space, yeah, it's going to be Altria, Philip Morris, and the British American Tobacco Company. Because hear me out. These three companies that you see on your screen right now, they already have the infrastructure. They have the operations down pat, they have investments into the winners of the green leaf space, and they have the production capabilities to grow and sell the green leaf if they decide to swallow up the competition. I don't know about you, but it makes a lot of sense to me for them to buy out all of the cannabis players. And I say that because the tobacco industry has shifted from focusing on traditional cigarettes to now going all in on smokeless nicotine products like Zyn. And so when I think about the green leaf, it has the potential to help the tobacco industry to grow like the tech space. And I'm not a tinfoil hat or conspiracy theory believer, but there's a lot of medicinal benefits related to CBD products, and that's another opportunity that they could capitalize on. Or perhaps the cannabis companies will stay independent and go through the growing pains so that they can play the long game instead. By doing so, they play the high risk, high reward game, and they can reap a bigger harvest if it pans out. Then again, remember what I said, there's too many cannabis companies to keep track of. So I would just eyeball a cannabis ETF such as MSOS. If you truly believe in the future of cannabis, then MSOS ETF is the best representative because their portfolio is strictly consisting of the cannabis field. Between you and me, I think the green leaf space still has a lot of headwinds coming their way because not every state and not every politician is open-minded to giving the green light for the green leaf. So, I don't know. How many years do you think until it becomes legalized? Me personally, I think the next 10 to 20 years, which means in the short term, it's still not going to be readily available everywhere. The next sector I think will thrive under Kamala Harris is health care, and more specifically, the Medicare health insurance space. Kamala is committed to prioritizing the Affordable Care Act, which was previously known as Obamacare, which means more funding and money dedicated towards Medicaid. Let me stop myself right there. The US health system is really convoluted, but in simplicity terms, Medicaid provides health insurance to our population's most vulnerable and weak. So think about people that are living in poverty, people that are disabled, people that are single mothers, and the list goes on. And the funding would also help Medicare, which is dedicated health insurance towards our elderly. My grandparents are on Medicare, and when you get up there in age, the health problems start to stack. Now hear me out. I'm only in my 30s and I have a bunch of stuff that I'm dealing with. Like even right now, I'm a little under the weather because I just got back from vacation, but fortunately, I'm not to the point where things are terrible. But with each passing day, the more that I believe in the statement that good health is good wealth. I know when I was a young lad, I always took my health for granted because I was always healthy. But now that I'm getting older, now I have to make dedicated, continuous effort in making sure that I'm doing the right things and know that I can be healthy. Sometimes when I'm sick, no exaggeration, I would give up my left nipple and sell it on the black market if it meant that I could have a strong immune system. I would do anything. But anyways, when we think about Medicare and Medicaid, the winners in this field are going to be CVS, Cigna, Humana, United Health, and Elevance, which was previously known as Anthem. Now, you better not tell your wife's boyfriend, but I'm personally invested into Humana and into CVS, and I'll say this to you. I wouldn't recommend them unless you understand how volatile the health insurance industry really is. If you're going to invest in these companies, it is not for the weak or faint of heart. The last winning sector is going to be tech, especially the semiconductor space. The Biden-Kamala administration signed the CHIPS and Science Act into law in August of 2022. The CHIPS Act provides $52 billion in funding to boost the U.S., United States semiconductor research, development, and manufacturing. Basically, all that to say, this was the lifeline that Intel, what you see on the left side of your screen, what they needed because they were about to become obsolete. AMD was pooping all over them and just smothering it all over their face. To the point where Intel would wake up the next day with pink eye, like Intel was getting smashed. One of the reasons why Intel has not filed for bankruptcy is that they have this lifeline known as the CHIPS Act. However, in return, Intel also needs to do their part and be good on their end of the bargain and create a successful chip manufacturing business, a foundry that they keep talking about that's going to be as reliable and as good quality like TSM in Taiwan. If they can't do that, the funding is only a short-term life vest for them, and they're going to end up drowning. Because when I think about Apple, AMD, and other companies that rely on TSM, they don't have the time and the luxury to take a gamble and a risk on Intel's foundry. So despite all of the incentives in place, they're just going to continue to partner with TSM instead. The tried and true, safe and steady method. Like they know they're going to get their chips on time and the quality is going to be good. So if you can't tell, I'm personally bearish on Intel, but they do have the government's support to the point where they're not letting them fail. So only time will tell. The other winners for the CHIPS Act include Broadcom, Qualcomm, Micron Applied Materials, and of course Skyworks Solutions, which by the way, I made a deep dive analysis video on. And outside of the semiconductor chip companies, I think the biggest tech winner is going to be Microsoft. Their government contracts will continue to be approved, especially for their Office products and Azure Cloud. I mean, after all, we're going to be looking at this later. Bill Gates donated $50 million to the Kamala Harris campaign, through a PAC. And even if we turn a blind eye to their relationship with the government, Microsoft is pumping out highly anticipated games for their Blizzard division and leading the way with AI through ChatGPT. Like, if I had to put a definition and a face to the perfect company for a beginner investor to go balls deep into, that would probably be Microsoft. But you know what? I think the rest of big tech like Google, Amazon, Meta, Nvidia would be business as usual if Kamala wins with market-beating returns year over year. I don't think anything is going to change anytime soon. And for those of you who think big tech is going to face harsh headwinds and regulatory pressure from Kamala, well, take a pause and let's go ahead and take a look at her campaign's biggest donors. I'm on a website called Open Secrets, and we're going to go ahead and look at the companies that have been donating the most to Kamala Harris. The first, right off the bat, we have Alphabet, which is the parent company of Google. And then we have University of California, we have Microsoft, Amazon, Apple, Meta. Are you kidding me? Big tech, the Magnificent Seven, they're all supporting the cause for Kamala Harris to become the next president. And then when we look at contributions that were dedicated towards her campaign and towards PACs, well, then the picture becomes a lot more robust. The first one is Future Forward, and this is actually a PAC that Bill Gates donated that $50 million towards. And as we scroll down here, we have Bloomberg, almost $19 million. We have a couple finance companies right here. We have Climate Power, and we have the EDF, which is another climate change PAC. So it looks like she's heavily backed and supported by big tech. You don't think that Kamala is going to take care of them when she becomes president? Come on. If you feel bullish about a Kamala victory, well, check this out. What you see on your screen right now is the past, 30 or so years, the average rate of return across 11 sectors. And with a Democrat president in office, the average rate of return for the S&P 500 has been 16% a year. What you see right here, the blue one right there. And with a Republican president in office, well, then it's only been 6%. But you know what? Wait a minute, that's not honest or truthful because the Great Recession of 2008 unfortunately happened under the Republicans and the tech bubble since 2021 happened under the Democrats. So that boosts their total return numbers. So what's the takeaway for all of this? All that to say, the monetary policy, Jerome Powell, market cycles, and a peaceful world will probably have a greater effect than who is in office on the stock market. And don't worry, I am currently working on stocks that will shine if Donald Trump wins, regardless of what I just said. Because at the end of the day, the president does have an influence on the success of certain sectors and companies in the stock market. And my last words to you will be this, and I sincerely wish that you would pay attention to this. I hope that you woke up today, regardless of if it was at 7 a.m. or at 1 p.m., and you realized that somebody loved you. And between you and me, I hope that someone was you. Despite everything that's going on right now in your life and what's going around in the world, I hope that you are kind to yourself today and for the rest of this week. With that said, I'll talk to you next time. Stay safe.